So first of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation and to give me the opportunity to speak here in Institut Pasteur about the relation between patients and researchers, because it's, I guess, an important topic in our field, and it's also something in which has been developed, especially in the AIDS community. The relation between patients and researcher is something very old and which has been built with time and with how the epidemic evaluated. And if we come back to 1989, which is or the 80s, which is the year 1989, the year of the Constitution of Acte Paris. In fact, it was a time where people like the activists, the first group of activists who made Acte Paris, came together because there were people living with HIV, and because they wanted to react against their disease and against the way the medical power could manage or not the disease of the people. And that's why the beginning of our empowerment, in fact, was a self-empowerment, which was first to construct, if I can say, our base of knowledge, our knowledge of the disease by everything which could be found, but also with our own experience. And that's how we built everywhere in the world, and not only in Paris, the first groups of people living with AIDS. And one of the most important things is to mention the principle of Denver, because the first coalition of patients were built during the conference, AIDS conference in Denver in '83, and this group of patients wrote a very important text for activists, for all AIDS activist organization that followed, which is called the Principle of Denver. And as you can see in this text, the principle of this is to say that patients must not be passive, they must be active, and they must act in the decision concerning them. And that means also taking part of the research. And in fact, it was something very important for people from ACTA, because at the beginning, the most important problem for us was to access to a therapy which did not exist at the beginning of the 80s. At '89, when we built Acte Paris, we had almost one antiretroviral. It was AZT, and that's all, which was not enough to control the disease. And that's why, in fact, in the agenda of these years, what was important for us was to get in contact with people, with the medical field, and with doctors and with researchers, to understand what was going on in research and what could we expect to get better health. And in fact, the people we wanted to meet for that was the administration on one side, the researchers on the other side, and also pharma industry. And that's why, in fact, a major issue was, in fact, the fight against pharma industry, because we share many issues together, but there is also many oppositions of the goal we have. because the pharma industry is there to make money and we are there to be alive, which makes sometimes that we are allies and sometimes that we are enemies. And this is something very important, which made that we put pressure on the pharma industry to go further and to go quicker and to push the agenda as quick as possible to get drugs and to get solutions, to get therapeutic solutions. But in the same time, we were sometimes allies with them to go further because it was our common interest, and sometimes it was complicated because we fight it against each other because we were, in fact, we did not share exactly the same issues. And in fact, in this kind of relation, we built in 93, sorry, we built a group. We joined our forces. I mean, all organizations, all AIDS fighting organizations in France decided to join their forces and to build a coalition, because in fact to try to impose our agenda to the researchers, the problem was that we were not, all organizations were not always had not always the same point of view, and most of the time our divisions were there where our counterparts could take the opportunity to play with our divisions. In fact, the idea we had was to build the TRT5 group. And as you can see, some years later, this is the different organization that compose this group, to have a common voice to our counterparts and mostly to the researchers, to be able to have a better pressure on the agenda of the research. It was very important at this time because the research was almost to find therapies and to find efficient therapies, which was the most important agenda we could have in the 80s and in the beginning of the 90s, until we arrived at the first efficient therapy in '96, which changed a little bit the priorities, as we will see a little bit later. A few words about TRT5. You see in 2018 we are 10 organizations, and about what we share in common, in fact, representing the voice of people living with HIV is the most important one. But we try to make in the agenda of the research that the interest of the person prime to the interest of science, which is one of the Helsinki principle. We try to have a comprehensive vision and to impose a comprehensive vision on people with HIV, and not only something focused on a specific research agenda. Obviously, our principle is to have no judgment and no discrimination, and to respect confidentiality of the data we have. We support, obviously, evidence-based medicine. It's even our principle. And we almost work on the benefit-risk equation all the time, trying, as I say, to have this watch on what is the interest of the person versus what is the interest of science. And the purpose of this is just to find efficient solutions. We have two goals: get the information from our counterparts and to advocate for needs and rights of the people living with HIV. We have three means of action: ethical issues in clinical research, therapeutic failure, which is a very important issue in our agenda, and to work on everything which is adverse effect of drugs. And we try to permanently have an ethical survey on everything which is access to care, which is access to research results, which is something which is very important for us, that the results of the research are shared with the first concerned people. And we have a permanent exchange with people working on trials, on clinical trials, but in general in research, to try to give them, I would say, what is in our agenda, but also to influence the design of trials when it's needed by the importance of the agenda for the patients. I come back just to Acta Paris to see that in '95, when we began to have efficient therapies, it was a time where Acta decided to make more information for the patients, for the people living with HIV/AIDS, and at this moment, in fact, we needed the collaboration of the researchers in the other way. I mean, usually we were asking them what they to share their knowledge with us. There, we asked them to share the knowledge with the people and to make our action of information possible, and that's we call this general program "Information égale pouvoir." In it, in this program we have we have books to share the information, but we also organized meetings, information meetings, public meetings. The idea of these meetings were to share, that we wanted the researchers to have a direct access to the people living with HIV, to share with them a result of the research and the latest result of the research, and to face to the questions and to the inspiration of the patients themselves. That was the principle of these meetings. And 10 years later, 10 years later, in fact, we decided to make a different way of empowerment, which was no more the empowerment of people living with AIDS, but of HIV negative people, which means making prevention. This is, I would say, the actual agenda, which is represented by this website, React Up, in which we share result of research directly coming from researchers. We share the result of research that can help people to understand prevention. And it's also made by paper issues to advertise the website, which is in fact a sort of giant database of knowledge for the people. And we'd like to more or less to end with an important example of collaboration between community and researcher, which was the PrEP trial Hypergay, in which we worked from 2009 to the end of the trial by making a community consultation before the trial to have an idea of the needs of the people targeted by this research. And we wrote a report from this community consultation, which gave a certain number of recommendations to the researcher, and who influenced very much the way this research was conducted. So, an idea, a quick idea of lessons learned, which is always something very important. And in fact, I must say that successes are rare. Even if we keep on our work and we keep on this link between researcher, because it's one of the most important things for us to try to influence the researcher with the needs of the people. In the same time, the researcher influence us with the result of their work. So thank you very much for your attention.